Good afternoon. My name is Barbara, and I would like to ask you some questions about your life because we are doing a project. So we would like to know how young people lived during that time. Okay. Could you tell me about your memories when you were a child?
Well, I am just 82 years old. My name is Elisabeth Jacobs. I was born in a bit in the north of Germany, but northwest, very close to the Dutch frontier. And there I tell you this because of my remembrances about the war. But I should start, just stop me when you have other questions, because otherwise you cannot hear what you want. But I should say in beforehand, having been born in 1930, it was so before the reign of Hitler. Hitler came only to power at 1933, and so a bit before Franco. I say that too because of the coincidences of history. My memory starts very, very early because I had 3 elder brothers, and in my family everything was very expressively spoken out. And my family, my parents, neither my brothers, the elder brothers, have everything left behind. On our dinner table, it was normal to speak about what we had in school. And my remembrances start so 5 years, 6 years, and so on. You would be very astonished to hear that. But as my parents, during the Hitler time, during the National Socialists, were on the wrong side. So they were suppressed, quite a few. We are from the family, we are Roman Catholics, and I must say the Roman Catholics from the very beginning were the part of the Christian Church which mostly were suppressed. Hitler first started to try to get into the family, especially just to try to have the youth by making the groups of youth compatible to the groups of Nazi youth. So I realized very early that my brothers had difficulties in school because school tried, or must try, to put them into the other groups of National Socialists. So me in the age of 10 already, this was just in my age already a whole class. Since my family was anti, from the very beginning I had in my memory, my father was a teacher, and a teacher of handicaps. So he was the headmaster of such a school, and I think you know that the National Socialists were going to eliminate not only the Jews but also all handicaps. And so I had heard with the other members of my family that my father said, well, they are coming to try to take my pupils out of the class, out of the school, and to eliminate them. They didn't speak it, but I know they would like to make a choice. And then he went to every family the day before and said, tomorrow your child is sick, please leave them at home. I cannot say anything more, you have to leave your child at home. Next day, the responsible list, it was the SR, came to tell them, well, my father should just extract the children who were handicapped, and so there were none. The other were just quite normal. And then he presumed, well, this man has really getäuscht. Moment.
Yeah, being getäuscht.
Die Nazis.
They discovered that this headmaster...
No, well, then I just say it differently. They were very upset. He did not say the truth. And therefore they were really nervous, and my father was just cut off as headmaster. And another one has become headmaster, and he, unfortunately, has followed their way. So that is one of my remembrances, even as a small child. And also I came into the 4th grade in elementary school, and there my mother, the Nazis took off all crosses from the school classes. It was used that in all school classes there was a cross at that time. And so the women, you know, the women in my generation were not all professionals outside of the house, they remained at home. And all these mothers of the children, or very many, came to the school and had a demonstration. The first demonstration which I saw, and my mother was leading this demonstration. So they were successful because it was in the first years, and they didn't cope with those women, and they did not understand how to manage. So the crosses first, for about a year, they still remained there. So you see, there can be, in resistance, there can be also success. And well, what is my, then if I speak of 1938, you know, that was the year when in October the Jews were persecuted in a special way. Before already they had to wear the star, and they had no normal name in the passport. They all were called Sarah or Israel. So they had no special, their old name was out of use, really. So well, and in this night in October 10th, they destroyed almost all synagogues. And my parents had a lot of Jewish friends in the town, and we did not know anything about that. They had fear. And there were big shops in the town, best shops, which the owner were also friends of my parents. And I remember the morning when the synagogues were bombed. It was impossible to go to school because the synagogue was in the middle of the town, and they had destroyed the shops, so we couldn't get through. And my mother went with me to one of these shops where that was a dear friend, and everything was blocked, and she went inside. And then this friend said, "Oh no, go away because you will be punished as well. They have punished us so much." Then I remember that my mother was very brave. I was not very brave. I dragged my mother because I felt that there is something unsure. Well, let's ask you now, because I think I go too much to the details.
But this is a very good experience to explain. That's good. With the economic crisis we are living nowadays, some new radical political parties are growing, like in Greece. So do you think we might live again a period similar to Hitler's time?
That that the Nazis will come back. Now you see, we have had, after the Second World War, we have had a whole breakdown. No leaders, no parties, nothing. So we must start from the very point zero. And there have been coming out of the camps and out of the hidden places, so like Konrad Adenauer, you know the name maybe, he was the first chancellor. He was already an old man, but they came out, he was hidden by Benedict monks in their monastery. They came out and had already in mind how the next government should be formed, roughly spoken. And so they, I must send this before just to answer your question. And so they formed a government. They always thought of democracy, but we were not, the Germans were not used to be live in democracy. So they must just have their memory from the 1920s, and the knowledge which the British had, which the American had. And so immediately there were two parties which started, three parties. First it was the communists, which were persecuted during Nazi period, and it was the socialists, a very old party, if I remember well, 1880 around, started this party, and they were coming also from exile. And the third, which newly was built, the Christian Democrats. There was a Catholic party in the 20th, but Adenauer, himself Catholic, he said, no more Catholic party, no more just one, we have to have a Christian formed party. Well, and there, these were the three beginnings, and a little later the Liberal Party started. So these parties have become the Liberals are now down, but the other parties have become very strong and have, during the last many years, have been stable. We have a small party which is Nazi. They think they are Nazi, but they are terrorists. Good, the Nazis were also terrorists, but they will not have a leader. And so this is just to neglect. They are 1.8%. They cannot come into the Bundestag, in our parliament. But what we have to do is always have our eyes on them, because Hitler started also very small. And I think it would be the same with Franco. When Franco came out, you had their general, and you had on the other side the follower, not direct, but the follower of Primo de Rivera. And so you had there another link, but the thinking was the same at that time. So I leave this, so otherwise I start.
What would you tell today's teenager to avoid a repetition of this terrible?
Again, please.
What would you tell today's teenagers to avoid the repetition of this terrible?
What are we avoiding? In Germany there's just now a discussion, a very intense discussion, following a process which has come out because a group of radicals, right radicals, have done quite a lot of attacks inside the population.
Murder, no?
Murders. and they make demonstration. Very often these demonstrations are not allowed, but they put themselves a bit aside, and from there they even are able to do that. This group we have not to neglect, and therefore inside the parliament it is discussed, shall we as a party, they organize themselves since years as a party, should we forbid them? Should we forbid them to continue? And there are two possibilities. If you forbid, they go into the underground, and from the underground they can do more harm. The one side says, as long they are open, we can better face them. The other group says of politicians, we must forbid them, we must let them out, and as soon as anybody shows himself as a National Socialist, we must immediately put him out. But then the others say, well, if the one or the other we can take, we have another blowing up of followers, and these followers will construct a new terrorism. So the discussion has not come to an end, but I suppose at the end of the year this has to be voted. And then we will see.
Die Frage war, was würdest du Jugendlichen sagen?
I did not understand. Then I didn't follow that.
No, that's okay. Your question
well,
was
I would say to the youth, the most necessary what you can do is to inform yourself. Inform yourself very broadly about the parties, either the ones who are ruling and the smalls who are coming up. And there is another necessity. You, the youth, are the responsible for the next generation. And as that is coming up, not only inform yourself, but look at the right and the left. If they are just showing terrorism, avoid it by discussion in the friends, in the classmates, and everywhere you meet anybody. And there you should even make a discussion group. Some of the youth here are making discussion groups where also their discussion can be followed in a way that everybody can say what he thinks about that, and that is an even broader information. Is it sufficient, or just ask again if I didn't understand you very well?
Oh, thank you very much.
It
was very interesting.
Continue with what were you doing when the wall fell?
Again, please.
What were you doing when the wall fell?
When the wall fell. I was not very. I was very often in the eastern part of Germany, and I knew that part. So never, either the people I saw there, neither we on the west side, we ever thought it would be happening. And when it happened, I really was flabbergasted. I was really out of my mind. I thought I'm just dreaming. It was something we had always heard about revolution, and this was a revolution which was coming. Will there be blood? Because we remembered in the 50s, in the 60s, that there already some of the Eastern Berliners had tried to face the soldiers and the police of Eastern Germany, and there was flowing blood, and always on the wall there was blood when the fleeing people from Eastern Germany crossed the wall. And now I always had, so I was fearing that this revolution would finally not be peaceful. And it was peaceful. And that was for me the really victory of peace and of freedom. And there were parts of these people in Eastern Germany who just were thinking of a better life. But this is allowed. They saw in the West that we had also built up from the very beginning, from the zero. All the cities and towns were destroyed. So we built up. But we saw we had come in the West to a certain standing of living. I must say, I'm always grateful to the Americans, because without Marshall Plan, we in the West would not have to that what we are now. And there you have another aspect. So they are profiting, and it's all right, of our yeah. So that we are giving to them what is right. And now that are difficult pieces, but you asked what I thought. Freedom, peace.
Did someone in your family do military service?
Which service now? The military service. They were all too old. My brothers were too old for militaries. You think during the Second World War? Yes, that is. My eldest brother fell in Russia. A small history. He, of course, went not willingly to the army, but the army, the officers said to him, he was very bright, you are just for being an officer. And he said, I'm studying theology. And then he said, oh, then you cannot be officer. But we would like to have you. Just change your studies. You can say you are going to be a doctor, a teacher, or something. Then he said, no, I cannot change my conviction. And then they said, but it is only said after the war you can do what you want. No, he said openly, I cannot serve this regime. And next day he was sent as a boy or as a young man of 19 years to the east, and it was just the time when the group and the army stood before Moscow, and there he is buried. And my next brother, it was very interesting. He was asked the same by the officers, and then he said, no, I have not been in the youth organization, I am not in the party, and why should I fight for Hitler? East also, but he returned very sick. He still lives, but he was, when he came out, 50% disabled, danke. And so, you see, when you entered, the third one was not old enough. He just was in the defense of flak, defense of against the bombers. So just in our town. So, but he had only difficulty because he spoke too much. He was taken out of school and so on.
How have your thoughts changed?
My thought, my life. You imagine, I was not born in a rich family because 4 children, and not a big house, but a nice house, and but we were well established. So after the war, everything was destroyed. We had not a needle, and fortunately, we were just occasionally not in our house because we would have been dead all. So, but what we saved was a bicycle. Everybody, my brothers were, one dead, one in Russia, so the 3 left, and we took our bicycle, took a bit of eating, but it was not much there, and we had a coat still left, and we had another pullover, so, and went by bike into into the exile, more or less. We did not know where to go, but for the first night we were to monastery, and then, well, that is another story. But well, now as a student, after the war, we had to change town and place. Never we found refuge where everybody of the family could sleep. So one slept there, one slept there, one slept there, because there was no room. And finally, my father, who was asked just to have a whole district to work for in school and to build up new schools, he asked the first, "Have you a place for living with my family?" "No, we have none." Then he said, "I must renounce this all because then I go into the countryside." So we were in the countryside, there we had a schoolhouse which was not destroyed. And then from there we were students. My brothers came back. Both of them had to study first to make their buck, and I was still too young, so I went to school. And afterwards I studied. I first went to be a teacher because I always had in my mind to study law. But I couldn't make it. My father died in the meanwhile. I couldn't make it. I couldn't ask my mother to give me money. And the bit I could earn by giving lessons or so was not enough. So I studied first with to be a teacher, and afterwards from there I worked and I studied law. But there, I must tell you this a bit broader, because only by that it was possible afterwards to go up. And then, well, I married. I was well educated, you say. And so I, step by step, I we earned, I married, and we earned quite a fortune. So my living is now very, very good. I am no more married, but I am on my own. And I'm now too old to work something, but always have relations. So just coming up.
Is there anything else that you would like to add?
Ask.
Add.
To add. Möchtest du noch
Ah,
was
ja.
hinzufügen?
Well, it is. I have stories, very, very many.
You can tell some of them.
All these stories, it would be would not interest you, I think.
No, this is interesting for us because
But
it's your life. It's your life.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Nimm doch einfach irgendwas, wo du denkst, es könnte Jugendliche interessieren, ja? Irgendeine
ja.
Begebenheit aus dem Dritten Reich oder aus der Familie oder
Ja.
ja, also wenn dir noch was einfällt.
Mhm,
Kann
ja,
auch aus der Zeit
there
danach
are
sein.
so many that I have
Irgendwas,
not-
wo du denkst, dass es vielleicht hier 15-, 16-Jährige interessieren könnte
Ja.
oder einfach eine neue Perspektive auch bietet.
Well, as I told you, my family was very Christian, and so one of the bases as a young girl, I started again. And I was brought up in resistance, and so I always looked also if the Christian side of my life would be sufficient. And so I always was first a bit in opposition. Young people are in opposition first to hear and to only think about the arguments. And I argued a lot. So I went after the war into the groups of youth, Jugendbewegung, gibt's sowas?
Movement of youth, I don't know. Yeah,
well, it had its roots already in the 20th, beginning 22, 23, and that came up again. It was all abolished from the Nazis, and so it started again for me to just build up this with other girls. Even being young, we had such experiences which many other people have not, and with these experiences we could build up. And we tried, quite a group, to have a certain reformation in these groups, and also to try to have other initiatives for the church. And well, it was not something great, big and something important, but as we see, sometimes it comes very late, sometimes you have difficulties, but in everything which you would like to build up, you have difficulties. Well, what for me has become very important are to learn languages. It was forbidden just to speak English. Later, the Nazis saw that it was necessary to learn the language of the enemy. And this was for me very difficult afterwards, to try to learn languages. Since I had Latin in school, English then as first language, the second was French. And well, afterwards I never have studied Spanish or Italian and Spanish, but I can speak it, and I cannot, I'm not concurrent to my niece, but I like to speak it, and other languages they are only. And this was very, very, for me, very important, to be, just to speak to people, to be with people. I have been traveling a lot throughout the world, and met very, very many people. So this was very constructive for me also. The languages, well, there would be still quite a bit. Was wäre noch interessant etwas?
Vielleicht hast du noch Fragen. Are there more questions or?
Would there be something? I have never spoken how I felt in the war. Because you remember that the war broke out in 1939 in the fall, and it lasted till 1939 to 1945. The first bomb attack in my town, in my little town on the border to the Netherlands, started the 10th of May in 1940. That was very early. It was the earliest bomb attack in Germany, because Hitler attacked the 10th of May, attacked the Netherlands, which really would not have thought of that, because they never have really been enemies. They were enemies to Hitler, but not to the people. And so this was really a surprise. My father had been soldiers in the First World War, And so he said, well, we must be in a corner of the house where there is no window, because when something is happening, all the windows will fall in. And then he gathered us in a corner of our sitting room, and he said we must open the windows because the blowing is destroying the glass. So this was the experience of a soldier of the First World War. And I remember it very, very hard, because it was the first time that I was really bedroht.
Scared. Menaced.
Threatened.
Threatened.
Right. To die. And this was such a bit. And then I was saying, oh well, they are bad who are just bombing us. And then I hear my father, he said, this is very silly what you say. You remember who started the war? And I said, Hitler. And then he said, those who are not bombing us, they are not bombing us as normal people, they are defending themselves. Shouldn't they defend themselves just against the Nazi? But we have to suffer with this. But they will help us to come out of this. And you will see, they will not be, die werden nicht ausgerottet, die werden nicht...
Die Niederländer.
Ja, nein.
Eliminated.
Yeah, they will not eliminate anybody of us, because we are normal people. And this, historically, it's interesting, because the troops, the American and British, they tried to avoid, in the first years, it was different in 1944 and 45, they tried to avoid the population, these Wohnbezirke,
Cities and
cities.
residence
And they
areas,
just
residential areas.
the crossing of railway
Infrastructure.
yeah, and all these necessary for necessities of having war, so war factories, bombs factories, and so. It only changed after some time. In the more Hitler got his proudness of being the
big boss,
victorious. So we as the people, we suffered more, because then the Americans and also the British had to fight also us. And this part I remember very well, because 1944 I came to an end as a child, that my nerves was coming to an end. And my father went with me to a neurologist, egal. And this doctor said to my parents, well, you must be sure to take this girl out. She must be in a place where she is in a farm or anywhere, and because she is going to be out of her brain. So I say that because it was such a terrible thing to be bombed every night. I have in my school was finished already in summer 44. I wasn't in school yet. It closed because we had normally day and night attacks, and we were sitting in a cellar and should follow the teachers. Imagine that the bombs were falling and we should follow the teachers. It was almost impossible. And then school closed, and we all we had a certain Zeugnis.
A certificate or...
Yeah, the certificate. I was in the 3rd class gymnasium, that was secondary school, and I went then, after the war, where should I start? I was, for 1.5 years, I had no school. And then I went to another school, and they said, because my town was so destroyed that we couldn't go back. And they said, well, try. Well, I said, I just go to the over next. I tried. I was lucky that they just left me, and after some time I was in. So you see which disorder. And to eat, I was very much hungry. And at the end of the war, as soon as we left or must leave my hometown, I know very well what hunger is. And it is all these experiences which I don't regret, because I have now the feeling for people who are hungry. And I know Mangel.
Starving.
Yeah, starving.
Lack of.
Lack, that's right. And I know what is lack of the most necessary things, and all lack of possibilities to be educated. And all this lack, I tell you this because in your age, nowadays, everything is offered. You can go into different countries. You can, when you learn conveniently, you can change schools. You can just, well, your difficulty is, if you go to university, if you are bright, not always you find a place to work. That is difficult. But these are other difficulties. They just don't touch first when you are a student, not the daily life.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed for your help and
you're
your
most
time.
welcome, I hope.
I'm so sorry. We're so sorry. We have another interview and we have to go.
Yeah, of course.
That's a pity. That's a really pity. Qué pena.
You're most welcome.